So, understanding history with bird's eye views, and accordingly, the frame where you can put your entire information in order to understand the sequential progress. So, before we proceed, let us have some format history. As per our traditional information, history is what historian says, or you can see history is a study of past. Study of past. So, study of past that all the events that we come across with, it exhibits the study of past. Ever since Darwin wrote a book, Origin of Species, in 1856. And Darwin had made the point very clear that ape ancestor of human. So human evolved from ape. This actually noticed by all biological and anthropological perspective. And ape ancestor of human. Then in 1871, Darwin wrote another book, Descent of Man. In this book, Darwin said, since majority of ape lived in Africa, so therefore we should look our ancestor in Africa. So after call of Darwin, most of the researchers, they rushed to Africa. Most of the researches were conducted in Africa. So therefore, most of the evidences we have from there. And the fossil evidence that connect the evolution of man from ape. So after studying so many fossils, what we see that Australopithecus first non-bipedal on earth, first non-bipedal on earth. And there was gradual evolution of Australopithecus walking on 2 foots. So obviously many things had changed. If we compare the lifestyle of knuckle walker and the bipedal, many biological evolution you can observe, many cultural evolution you can observe. And of course, in order to make their life easier, they started using the tools also. So therefore, in case of Australopithecus, you can see it was a very, very evolved biological species. Biological evolution. We can see parallel thing is that cultural evolution. And then we have technological evolution as well. Technological evolution as well. All 3 things are parallel in the course of evolutionary history. So biologically you can see Australopithecus was much evolved compared to the knuckle walker. And after Australopithecus, gradual evolution process, and finally it is Homo sapiens. The biological name of modern human, Homo is our genus, and sapiens species. And after that, we don't have any evolution in the history of, in the context of humans. So therefore, this is the most evolved and modern species that you can see, Homo sapiens. Biological evolution, cultural evolution, technological evolution, all went parallel. So Homo sapiens, the first species, started using stone, sandstone, to make tools. And in the historical perspective, ever since this stone was used to make tools, this is beginning of our syllabus called Stone Age. So in the entire aspects of history, the beginning, you can say, the man became ape, or ape became man, and man became human. Rather, this is the correct chronology. So human to 2021. This is a timeline of history. Or earlier we can see when life evolved on earth. Life evolved on earth. And then earth crust. Earth came into existence. $4.5 billion year ago, earth came into existence. And almost 1 billion year later, life evolved on earth. Almost around 3.6 billion year, life evolved on earth. And then gradually, beginning of Homo sapiens. Rise of Homo sapiens species. Until we have 2021, this is entire aspects of history. If it is a study of past, that all the events that had occurred in between, if it comprised history, then it is a never-ending subject. But we study only those events which have great impact on social, economical, and political life of human. Some of the events, very selective events. And that selective events, you definitely had a curiosity of the causes and the consequence of that event. And actually that filled the gap and which constituted history. So all these things that we come across with by studying the facts. We have the facts of 3000, 4000 years ago, and we analyze it in the modern time to find what actually it was. So that is what the analysis of the fact. And historians, archaeologists, biologists, scientists, they actually analyze the facts, and we can see what is history. It is a study of facts. Analysis of facts. Scientific and chronological order. Scientific and chronological study of facts, it is called history. So study of facts, analysis of the facts, scientific and chronological order. So by definition, you can see history is what historian says, and historians, by analyzing the facts that come across with study of facts, scientific and chronological study. So we divide history in three segments. Ancient, medieval, and modern. We divide history in three segments: ancient, medieval, and modern. Ancient, medieval, and modern. We'll start some important topics in the syllabus of ancient India, medieval India, and modern India. There is no technical reason to divide history in ancient, medieval, modern, because in a year or decade, we don't see so much changes in the society. The society, economy, politically, all evolved in due course of time. And when such a stagnant society was undergoing changes, we can see that it had taken the century to manifest what changes we have seen, and that too based on the written records. Visibly you can't see. And therefore, you can see that the division of history in ancient, medieval, and modern, it's only for convenience of study, and there is no technical logical reason behind the division of the subject. Because you cannot divide history, it is in the process of continuity and change with respect to time. So there is no watershed. Events are there, but immediate consequence of that event in the social, economic, and political life of the human being was generally realized after a long time. So history, basically, we divide history into, for the convenience of study, ancient, medieval, and modern. This is for the convenience of study. So while studying ancient India, let us observe that we have seen that ever since man started using stone to make their life easier in order to construct the tools, and that we say it was the beginning of Stone Age. So comparatively, the previous life when human was in the stage of evolution, and then gradually using the stone to make the tools, this is called Stone Age. We divide Stone Age in three different eras: Paleolithic, Paleo means old, lithic means stone. So this is Old Stone Age. Old Stone Age, Paleolithic. Then we have Mesolithic, Middle Stone Age, Middle Stone Age, and Neolithic. New Stone Age. Old Stone Age, Middle Stone Age, and New Stone Age. For higher study, we divide Paleolithic also in three parts. That is called Lower Paleolithic, Middle Paleolithic, and Upper Paleolithic. For higher classification, you can divide Paleolithic age in three parts. Almost 1.5 lakh year ago to 10,000 BC, normally we see this is a period which is called Paleolithic period. And this is the time when human had taken complete shape, that is in the form of Homo sapiens. So they were using stone to make the tools, and they started using tools that is made of a, we can say, a sandstone, which can easily, we can break it. It's called hand axe. A large piece of stone, it was a cut like this. This is a working border, hand axe. This is the things that you hold in the hand axe. And then the same instrument, if it is sharpened from one side, right, this is called cleaver, right? And then sharpened from other side also, both side. You can cut both sides. It's called chopper chopping. Chopper chopping. So, in Paleolithic period, we have three types of tools: hand axe, cleaver, and chopper chopping. It was made up of sandstone because it can easily be broken to make the same shape and size of the tools. Obviously, the economy was hunting and food gathering. Economy was hunting and food gathering. They were hunters and food gatherers. And in tune with the economy, you can see the use of the tools that is called hand axe, cleaver, and chopper chopping. In Middle Paleolithic period, we have discovery of fire. Discovery of fire. Definitely, it had changed the lifestyle of human. Earlier, they were eating the raw meat. Now they started the baked brick. Now they started eating tandoori. That is what the discovery of fire had totally changed their lifestyle. Protection from enemy. So lifestyle had changed after this. Middle Paleolithic. And then Upper Paleolithic is, see, in Upper Paleolithic, human definitely were living in caves. Before that, they might be living in the plain areas. Wherever they had a chance, they sleep, they on tree, wherever there was a chance. But in Upper Paleolithic, they were definitely living in caves. And we have found many caves where the early human used to live. For example, there is a place in MP, Bhimbetaka. Where early human used to live. Bhimbetaka, place in MP, Madhya Pradesh. Bhimbetaka, where early human used to live there. Bhimbetaka. And in the cave of Bhimbetaka, you can see there is a painting. Painting was considered to be the earliest painting made by human. Dry color was used and that was painted on dry walls. Dry color was used and that painted on dry walls. This is an example of mural painting. Mural painting. All the prehistoric painting, it is classified as mural painting. And at the same time, some examples we have from Ajanta cave. Ajanta cave painting is also example of mural painting. Lepakshi temple, the painting of Lepakshi temple is also example of mural painting. So this is earliest form of painting. Dry color was used on dry walls to paint. And this is a natural color, red and green, that comes from the extraction of the plant juice, and it was dried up to make the color, and that was put on the wall. This is what is a mural painting. So this is the earliest form of painting that was practiced by early human in the Paleolithic period. Tools were very sharp, and at the same time size of the tools was very big, and we have seen hand axe, cleaver and chopper chopping. In Mesolithic period, that is Middle Stone Age, look at, there was sharp change in tool technology in Mesolithic period. Sharp change. When earlier there was a big size tools, now suddenly they had a micro size tool. We will see. Micro, don't confuse with 10 to power minus 6. Micro means small. So Mesolithic. The period we see 10,000 to 6,000 BC. Mesolithic is a transition between Paleo to Neo. Paleo to Neo means whatever the characteristics we observed in Paleolithic age, whatever the characteristics we will see in the Neolithic age, the glimpse of all you can see here in Mesolithic. So it is a transition of Paleo to, this is a transition period. Transition period. This is a transition period. We can see in this period, along with the hunting and food gathering, there was some evidence that is the beginning of agriculture also. If you see the example of Mesolithic period in Belan Valley it is in Allahabad. Belan Valley. In Allahabad. Kuldi Hava. This is a place in Belan Valley. Here we have the evidence of rice husk. Rice husk. This is oldest evidence of agriculture. Oldest evidence of agriculture in any parts of the world. You can date it around 6500 BC. 6500 BC around. After making the carbon dating of Mesolithic period, Koldi Hava, the rice husk that we got, this is the oldest evidence of rice or agriculture, grain in any part of the world. So we have hunting and food gathering in continuation, but at the same time, use of agriculture was also realized. Transition period, 10,000 to 6,000 BC. So in this period, we can see there is a microlith. Microlith. The tools of this period is called microlith. It's very small. We can see the size of the tools around 1 centimeter to 5 centimeter. Very effective tools. Humans started using bow and arrow. First human missile, you can say bow and arrow. This arrowhead, it is called microlith. Arrowhead, this is called microlith. Sharp edged weapons. We have the harpoons also, it is called microlith. Harpoons, that is the heating point. This is microlith. So this is a transition of paleo to new. However, the Neolithic age, it is called Neolithic revolution. It is called Neolithic revolution. Because agriculture became the dominant form of economy. Hunting and food gathering became recessive, but at the same time, the dominant form of economy became agriculture. This was an agricultural society that is called Neolithic age. So obviously, when we do agriculture, we have to settle at one place for the long time. Before that, in Paleolithic or Mesolithic, we can see that this period should be called a period of transhuman migration. Transhuman migration. Whenever they exhausted the resources, they moved to some other place. But in agricultural economy, the society should be stable at one place. They had to stay for the long time. So therefore, the settled habitation had started. Settled habitation, that you can say the tribal mode of society, tribal mode of economy had given the way that led to the establishment of villages. The domestication of animal will become more important. Domestication of animal would become more important compared to the rearing, sheep rearing. So settled habitation. Village. In this age, copper, it was first metal used by human. In the Neolithic period, copper was first metal used by human. Before it was used in any part of the world, you can see in the Neolithic sites of India, in around Indus, it had started. Bone tools means the tool technology became more sharper. We have needle, we have knife. So therefore, the technological evolution definitely will pave the way for some new economic development, some new cultural perspective. Technology is directly proportional to culture. All technological changes will proceed in the form of cultural progress. So bone tools. In Kashmir, we have a very fantastic Neolithic site, Burj Hom. Burj Hom. This site is model of Neolithic culture. Model of Neolithic culture. Model of Neolithic culture, Burj Hom. We have pit dwelling. This is a new method of settlements, their house making. Pit dwelling. If this is earth, then 3/4 part it was below the earth, only 1/4 was above the ground, and hut size is very small hut size. They live there. This is what is called pit dwelling. This is the ground. Pit dwelling. And at the same time, it is in Kashmir. At the same time, in Burj Hom, we have a new method of burial practices. Means after dead body was buried, so dog was buried with the master. In almost all the grave, dog was buried with master. Dog, animal used for hunting. So dog was buried with the master. This is something like the beginning of the concept that is called life after death, rebirth. Dog will born again, human will born again. They will be there together. So this is what is called rebirth. So Burj Hom is the model of Neolithic sites. Model of Neolithic sites. And there are many evidences of the Neolithic period we can see in various parts of India. Neolithic period was very categorically arranged. One site here, Mehergarh. Mehergarh. We can see the location of Mehergarh, where the Indus plain ended and the Iranian plateau had started. So this is a confluence of both transition of Indus plain and the Iranian plateau, Mehergarh. We have many significant material culture excavated from Mehergarh, and that shows the urban character. How gradually a Neolithic site was evolving itself in the form of urban character. So plenty of Neolithic sites we have scattered all over India, and at least we can predict there was cultural unification at that time only, that almost all the parts of India having the same Neolithic trends. Okay, Mehergarh. So after having some of the ideas about the Stone Age, we have the first urban civilization. It is called Indus Valley. Indus Valley civilization. Indus Valley civilization. This is also known as Harappan civilization. Harappan civilization. You can see that in 3000 BC, that is the third millennium BC, there was a beginning of urban centers in many parts of the world. Obviously, urban centers means the center where 70% economic activities was non-agricultural: art, craft, industry, trade. So we call these site as an urban site. So in 3000 BC, in many parts of the world, and on the basis of carbon dating, Mesopotamian civilization considered as oldest. Then we have the same time frame of Indus and Egyptian civilization. Then we have the Chinese and then Greek civilization. In terms of time frame, we can look at this is the rise of civilization. Mesopotamian, Indus, Egypt almost parallel. Indus and Egypt almost parallel in time frame. And then Chinese civilization and then Greek civilization. So, how we got to know about Indus Valley civilization? Definitely during the time of the British. In 1826, there was a survey in the northwestern part of India. It was a survey of railway line. British started surveying the construction of railway. So the surveyor general was surveying the viability of the railway lines in the northwestern part of India. And in the survey report, Charles Mason, he got to know, come across with many small objects, very antique look, very primitive, like potteries, like bricks, like the various kind of the material culture used in that period. So look very primitive. So Charles Mason, he was first to predict the existence of civilization, a very old civilization in this area. He predicted in the survey report. Then subsequently, in 1921, the Chief of Archaeological Survey of India, John Marshall, he excavated a city of Harappa. Harappa, it is located in Pakistani Punjab today, on the bank of river Ravi. And when he excavated the city Harappa, and there was almost a very structural urban centers were there. Structurally, it was depicting the very planned city. Planned city. Well organized planned city. So there were proper method, municipal activities, drainage system. So it was a urban centers. And the pattern on which Harappa was based, there were many cities in and around the Indus and all the rivers of Punjab. We have started getting many cities having very similar structure like Harappa. So therefore, John Marshall, he used the term Indus Valley Civilization. Indus Valley Civilization. Since Harappa was the first city of that civilization, which was duly excavated by John Marshall, and therefore it should also be called as Harappan civilization. Harappa was the first city that came into existence, therefore it should be called Harappan civilization. Harappan civilization. Out of the many characteristics of this civilization, Harappans were the first in the world that they got to know how to mix copper with tin. And bronze. Copper was mixed with the tin and it was a bronze. So, this is the biggest technical achievement compared to the any contemporary civilization, and therefore it should be called Bronze Age civilization. Bronze Age civilization. Right? So, John Marshall. So, whether you can say Indus Valley civilization, whether you can say Harappan civilization, or then Bronze Age civilization are same. More technical and correct in most of the standard books, we normally use Harappan civilization. Harappan civilization. Rather than calling Bronze Age civilization, we can say Harappan civilization. In this civilization, the town planning was very uniformly placed. Very uniformly placed. Each city, it was divided in two parts. Citadel. It was a fortified area, slightly raised from the ground. It was a fortified, it's kind of fort-like of a structure was there. This is a place where the elite class or the ruling class people used to live there. Elite class. Ruling class means those who ruled the civilization. We are not sure whether it was ruled by a priest or a merchant, or whether it was a democratic system, but they used to live here. We have many administrative buildings and the religious buildings at the same time, house of the elite class people. And in Lower Town, we can see the houses. It was meant for common people. There was market complex, industrial unit, all were there in this Lower Town. It was called Lower Town. So we can see that study of Harappan civilization means study of its urban center. And no urban center could survive without the support from the villages. But we don't have proper record or proper evidence to study about the village system of the Harappans. So we study the urban centers of the civilization. So Citadel and Lower Town. Citadel and Lower Town. We have found till 2000, if you see the record till 2000 AD, we have found almost 2000 centers. that sounds similar to the Harappan civilization, all the characteristics that we have. And most of the areas where it was confined to, it was in the Indus and Saraswati belt. Indus Saraswati river. Saraswati was a mighty river which was flowing in Rajasthan and Gujarat. Now it had extinct, not it had dried up, but this is the core area of the settlement of Indus Valley civilization. From Jammu Kashmir to Maharashtra, the civilization is scattered from JK to Maharashtra, then Western UP to Pakistan, Baluchistan, and in this entire geography, there are many sites which is called urban centers of Indus Valley civilization. Balochistan in Pakistan, the eastern side. Western side, we have the Western UP, and then JK, and then Maharashtra. Northern side, JK, Maharashtra, southernmost line. So in this entire periphery, we have the many sites of Indus Valley civilization. Some of the important sites. Some of the important sites like Mohenjo-daro. It was the largest site of Indus Valley civilization located in the Sindh province of Pakistan. Area-wise, population-wise, it was largest. And therefore, categorically, it was said the capital of Indus Valley civilization. And the many material culture that we got from here, that also suffix the same theory that it should be rightly called as a capital of Indus Valley civilization. Harappa, the first city, and it was a very large city as well, second only to Mohenjo-daro. Then we have the most advanced, the modern city called Lothal. Harappa is located in Pakistani Punjab. Lothal, it is in Gujarat. This is a port city, highly advanced city. This is the latest city, very modern, mainly built for export and import purpose, because we have found the dockyard which was used for transportation of goods to the different parts of the world, including Mesopotamia, including Sumeria. So Lothal. Kalibangan, another site, is a very important site of Indus Valley civilization located in Rajasthan. Kali means black, Bangan means Bengal, black Bengals. The women of that site used to have a black bangles made up of clay. After burning it became black, and therefore it was owned by Kalibangan. And likewise, many Dholabira, it is also located in Gujarat, and by size it was largest considered in India. So if you have a question, which of the following site is considered as the largest site, then Mohenjo-daro. If it is largest site in India, then Dholabira. And another center in India is under progress of excavation. It is Rakhigarhi. It is in Haryana. If it will come into full-fledged excavation and verified, then it would be the largest center of Indus Valley civilization, even much bigger than Mohenjo-daro. So it is under process of excavation. So normally we don't consider as the final output in suffixing the answer. So Mohenjo-daro to Rakhigarhi, it is in Haryana. Such informations required when you appear in examination in prelims, then you have to be very careful in answering, and by that way we can understand. Concentration of finishing the thing. Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, Lothal, Kalibangan, Dholabira, Rakhigarhi. These are the sites. So as per the NCERT, the time frame, the entire Harappan civilization, this is the urban phase of Indus Valley civilization, 2350 BC to 1750 BC. This is urban phase of Indus Valley civilization. So before that we have the Stone Age, Paleolithic, Mesolithic, Neolithic, or something which is called pre-Harappan period. Pre-Harappan period. And here we can see post-Harappan. We will study that how these urban cities had declined. Some says because of the invasion of the Aryans, which theory was totally negated. Some says that it was mainly because of the ecological imbalances, and that is scientifically explained. So Indus Valley civilization had declined because of ecological imbalances. Ecological imbalances. Ecological imbalances of any kind, like catastrophic or gradual. Catastrophic, so earthquake, we have fire, we have flood, and that had changed the entire ecological perspective. And since one center was totally dependent on other center, so such type of integrative ways to build the urban cities. So interrelated, there was a complex relationship between the nearest tribal community and the village community and the urban center, and that make the sustainability of entire geography. So therefore, if one center declined, it will affect the other center. If a civilization declined, it will affect the other civilizations. So therefore, this is called the delicate balance of relationship between various centers, and it had got disturbed because of ecological imbalances. So whether it was a catastrophic or gradual, ecological imbalances, catastrophic or gradual. Gradual means whether it was drying of riverbed or changing course of rivers. So catastrophic and gradual. Vedic civilization. Vedic culture. After Indus Valley civilization, in our syllabus we have Vedic culture. Look at the period of Vedic culture, 1500 BC to 600 BC. This is called Vedic culture, Vedic period. So it was said that Aryans came from Central Asia and they did not came at a time but came in phases, various groups. And whenever the new group come to settle in the northwestern part of India, there was a conflict. So therefore, conflict and coexistence, that led to the establishment of a composite culture, that is formation of cultures. So conflict and coexistence. Central Asia. Aryans came from Central Asia. It is the acceptable theory that we have so far, but modern research is saying something else. That is, not only Aryans came from Central Asia, but the Indian were also moving because they were pastoral, and it is quality of the pastoral community, transhuman migration. So Aryans came from Central Asia, and why did they come? Simple answer is in search of pasture land. So the theory that Aryans came as an invader, it was altogether rejected by the modern analysis. Aryans came from Central Asia in search of pasture land. In search of pasture land. So they came in groups, and that means the melting pot of cultures. Whenever new group come across with, that actually determine that there is a conflict and coexistence, and that is called synthesis of the cultures. The meaning of the word Aryans, earlier it was said that Aryans basically superior race, or you can say a cultural community. Many things was explained on the basis of their physical feature, the racial characteristics. But more refined information about the Aryans, that Aryans basically it was a linguistic community. Means those who speak Indo-European language, they were called Aryans. Like Sanskrit, like Persian, Germans, Russians, Italians, it was called Aryan language, Indo-European language. So Aryan better defined as a linguistic community rather than proving it is a race or cultural community. Aryans. Aryans, they composed Vedic literature. And this is called Vedic period because all the literatures that is called Vedic literature, it was there only. So when we say Vedic literature, there are four. Ved, Brahman, Aranyak, and Upanishad. Ved, Brahman, Aranyak, and Upanishad. These are called Vedic literature. Other than that, all are called non-Vedic. Suppose we put the example Puran. Puran, definitely non-Vedic literature. Smriti, suppose we have put the Manu Smriti, non-Vedic literature. So whenever we talk about the Vedic literature, it's only four, that is Ved, Brahman. Brahman is a literature, Aranyak, and Upanishad. And it was composed in series. First Veda was composed, then Brahman composed, then Aranyak, then Upanishad. Okay. Then we have Vedas are four. Rig Veda, Sam Veda, Yajur Veda, and Atharva Veda. Rig Veda, it's very important for historical understanding of the Aryans. Early Aryans, historical understanding, their social, economical, and political life we come across with by studying the Rig Veda. From Veda, it is said that it was musically composed, origin of music composed in Samveda. Yajur Veda, it's a ritual, it's a book of rituals. And Atharveda, it's exhibiting the Ayurveda herbs, medicine, tantricism, magic, all thing. That is what is called four Vedas. So if you see, this is Vedic period. Vedic period. 1500 BC to 600 BC. This is Vedic period. BC interval. This is called Rig Vedic period because Rig Veda was composed during this period. This Rig Veda belongs to this period, 1500 to 1000. However, Sam Veda, Yajur Veda, Athar Veda, Brahman, Aranyak and Upanishad, these all, it was called later Vedic period, later Vedic literature, because it was compiled after 1000 BC to 600 BC, later Vedic literature. Samved, Yajurved and Atharved, Brahman, Aranyak and Upanishad. It was later Vedic literature. Okay. So on the basis of these two groups of literatures, we can assess the social life of the Aryans during Rig Vedic period, their political life, their economic dimension. Here there was mostly dominance of pastoral economy. In Rig Vedic period, we can see by studying the Rig Veda, there was a dominance of pastoral economy and the agriculture was very less, negligent. Although they had knowledge about the wheat and the barley, but it was not their cropping system. And in later Vedic period, we can see this is a period of dominant agricultural activities. Dominance agricultural activities. So obviously, changing the economic pattern will affect their social and political life as well. So agriculturally dominant economy of the later Vedic period, it paved the way for formation of a state. Here, if you say this, the stateless system, in the later Vedic literature, we definitely have a state system. Here, the king was there, but king was ruling over people. Jan, Z-A-N-A, Jan means people. So in Rig Veda, we have the reference of Jan, that is people, and the king was ruling over people. There was no permanent territory, but here in the later Vedic literature, we have a reference of Janpad. This is called Janpad. And Janpad means territory. Janpad means territory. So now it was the beginning of territorial monarchy. In the later Vedic literature, there was a beginning of territorial monarchy. Territorial monarchy. Beginning of territorial monarchy. So the source of study, we have these three Vedas, Sam Veda, Yajur Veda and Athar Veda, Brahman, Aranyak and Upanishads, all that was combined. In 1000 BC, we can see iron. Iron. Aryans came to know about the iron around 1000 BC. And tools of iron, made up of iron, was broadly used here. First, it was in the form of war weapons, because iron was not so hard so that we can use it for the plowshare or for making axe to cut the thick forest of that Gangetic Valley. So iron, mostly it was used for war weapons. Although it had significantly affected the economic dimension of the period, tax collecting system, as this is a state formation. So it was beginning of territorial monarchy, and we know our reference of Kuru and Panchal. Kuru, Pandav and Kaurav, the historical antecedents of that Mahabharata, you know. So it was first territory that was carved out in the northern India in the form of Janpad, and then gradually Janpad will transform into Mahajanpad. Janpad will transform into Mahajanpad. So this is a Vedic period. So let us talk about the post-Vedic period. Post-Vedic period. This period is marked by second urbanization. Second urbanization. First urbanization, we refer to Harappan urbanization, that was in the Indus and Saraswati region. But second urbanization, it had happened in the Gangetic Valley. Gangetic Valley. In many ways, this urbanization was significant because it was definitely based on agricultural surplus. Agricultural surplus. But at the same time, there was a flourishing nature of trade and commerce. We see the monetization of economy. First time we have seen the development of coins and currency. That is what? Punch marked coins. Punch marked coins was the first coin that had came in circulation. It was made up of copper. Copper. So in many ways, second urbanization was more intense compared to the first urbanization, as the added advantage was high grade trade and commerce that had started in this phase, and monetization of economy. It definitely contributed a lot in the rise of second urbanization. So first important characteristics of this period is the urbanization of Gangetic Valley. Second important characteristics, that is the Mahajanpad. 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 That is Jan to Janpad and then to Mahajanpad. So by the time we can see there are 16 Mahajanpad. So out of the 16 Mahajanpad, one was Magad. Magad. Magad Mahajanpad. And gradually Magad Mahajanpad had overshadowed other Mahajanpads, and it had transformed into Magadhan Empire. Magadhan Empire. It had transformed into Magadhan Empire. Magad Mahajanpad. it had transformed into Magadhan Empire. We will see in detail about the Magadhan Empire. And after Magadhan Empire, we have rise of the Mauryans. It was a pan-India empire established by Chandragupta Maurya and Ashoka. The climax of the empire formation. And the third dimension was the rise of heterodox sects. That is, a rise of Buddhism and Jainism. Buddhism and Jainism. Altogether, it had transformed the thought process of entire social structure, structural as well as functional change. It was a social revolution against many orthodox and the evils present in Indian society. It was transformation. So, Buddhism, rise of Buddhism and Jainism. So, mainly in this phase, we'll focus on the Magadhan Empire and then transformation into Mauryan Empire. But before that, we have some glimpse of the Gautam Buddha and the Jaina as well. We have to read in detail. It's a very high class philosophy. So, we need to go for. In the perspective of Buddhism, I told you that it is a social revolution. Gautam Buddha, he is not founder of Buddhism, but he was the real founder of Buddhism. Because there were many Buddha before Gautam Buddha. Those who received enlightenment. So there are many Buddhas before Gautam Buddha. But when Gautam received enlightenment and thereby he became Buddha, we can see that he gave organizational structure to Buddhism. And Buddhism was acceptable to the public by his charismatic personality, and that is the reason why we call Gautam Buddha a real founder of Buddhism. So 563 BC, Siddharth, born in a princely family. But few days after his birth, his mother died, so his primary nourishment was made by his aunt Gautami, and therefore he began to known as Gautam. After leading the family life, he started distancing with a verified question that what is a root cause of human suffering? And what he found, nobody is happy after getting the birth. So two primary questions that he had in mind: what is the root cause of human suffering, and why human born again and again to suffer? The cause of the suffering and cause of the rebirth to suffer again. This was a fundamental question that he came across with. So at the age of 29, he left the house. It is called Mahabhiniskarman. Mahabhiniskarman. That is great renunciation. Great renunciation. Great departure. Departure to achieve something exceptional. Great renunciation at the age of 29. Then, after 6 years of continuous penance here and there, coming in cross with many people, at the age of 35, he got the supreme knowledge that is called Nirvan. He was sitting on the under the people tree, very important, and he got the Nirvan, and therefore Gautam became Gautam Buddha. So after becoming Buddha, he gave the first religious discourse at Sarnath. Sarnath is in UP. First religious discourse is called Dharma Chakra Parivartan. Dharma Chakra Parivartan. Right? And Buddha died in 483 BC. This is called Mahaparinirvan. Mahaparinirvan. So this is entire timeline of the birth to death of Gautam Buddha. And in between we will see the Buddhist philosophy related to his concept of theory of karma, theory of nirvana, or his approach of defining the God. He was basically concerned about the root cause of human suffering. So Gautam Buddha, it was a revolutionary thing that Buddhism should be called as a social revolution. Likewise, we have a Mahavir. (540 BC) he born, and then at the age of 30 he left the house. There is no such celebrity, but 12 years continuous penance, he got the supreme knowledge, which is called Kaivalya. And what is so different, that Buddha rejected the existence of soul, but Mahavira said, you suffer because your soul suffer. So soul is the ultimate place where the human suffering had started, according to Mahavira. And the impact of bad karma was realized on the soul, and then you suffer because your soul suffer. And after Kaivalya, he got death, which is called Nirvana. So death in Jaina is Nirvana, and in Buddhism knowledge is called Nirvana. So we'll see the fundamental thing before we come across with the existence of soul was accepted by Mahavira. This is a fundamental thing. Difference between Buddha and Jaina. There are so many, but we will study in detail for your information. These two great characters of Indian society had transformed the way that you think, gave the solution, what is a root cause of human suffering and why human born again and again to suffer. Okay. So after Buddha Jaina, we have in syllabus, that is the rise of Magadhan Empire. Initial capital was at Rajgiri, it is in Bihar, and then it was transferred to Patliputra. So in the bracket of Magadhan Empire, the four different dynasties that ruled here: Aranyak dynasty, Nag dynasty, Nanda dynasty, so Nanda dynasty. Fundamentally, you can see the Nandas were ruling entirely down to dusk. But During the time of Nandas, we have a university placed here. It is called Takshila University. Takshila University. Oldest university known. So in Takshila University, there was a Professor Chanakya. He was a professor of political science. So Chanakya and Chandragupta. But during the time of Nandas, Alexander, he was from Syria. He was representing the Eastern Roman Empire. So Alexander invaded over India. 326 BC. And there was total chaos after the invasion of Alexander. No command over this area. But Alexander had to retreat because of his military refused to further proceed in the conquest plan. So Alexander had to retreat, and therefore total political vacuum at this place. So taking advantage of that, Chandragupta, with the help of Chanakya, captured this area first, and then he had taken the advantage of the unpopularity of Nandas and then captured the Patliputra and thereby established the Mauryan Empire. So geopolitical unity of India was definitely exercised by Chandragupta Maurya with the help of Chanakya, and that is called establishment of Mauryan Empire. Mauryan Empire. 323 BC. 3 years after the invasion of Alexander, and the way that entire story was crafted, that how Chandragupta had taken the advantage of invasion of Alexander, and then advantage after the withdrawal, it was explained in Mudra Rakshas. So Mudra Rakshas, this is a drama written by Bishak Dutt. And he explained that how Chandragupta and Chanakya had taken the advantage of the chaos created because of the invasion of Alexander. So that led to the establishment of Mauryan Empire. And that led to the establishment of Mauryan Empire.